So I'm excited to announce today's guest, Samantha de Mattos. She is an author, speaker, and an ADHD coach. And she goes into companies even and trains them in ADHD friendly practices. Hi, Samantha.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, super happy to be here. Love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you
All
infuse the
right.
future?
So, well, as you said, I'm Samantha Mattos and I do a lot of ADHD coaching. Now, I fell into this. This isn't, I didn't go out to be like, I want to be an ADHD coach. I wanted to be a coach because I really like talking to people about what they want to do with their lives. I wanted to do career coaching and I still do, but then I found out that I had ADHD. And went through this whole personal like journey where I mean, I used to work in science in laboratories, and I had to leave that for what I now realize was undiagnosed ADHD. Um, a few years after that, I tried out a few different careers. I actually went into teaching for a little bit, which is how I found out about all the ADHD stuff. Because I taught in college level in the UK. So that's where I taught, and I taught marine science. As I kind of saw the students having their problems and it being kind of like, oh, the student's ADHD, I was just like, I do that. I was like, I do that too. And I hadn't really clocked until my partner said to me, babe, do you think you might have ADHD? And I was just like, oh my God, oh my God. And then that put me into this absolute rabbit hole of finding stuff out. Now, luckily, I've got like a really supportive mum. And like when I told her everything, she was like, oh my God, darling, this is what was going on all along. You obviously have this. And it was really exciting, actually. I went to my doctor, talked to him about it. I also have a lovely doctor. And he put me on the process to be diagnosed. So when I found out, and when I had in January, I actually had the proper diagnosis. And it was kind of like a, whoa, cool, okay, brilliant. Now I know what I'm working with. And I talked about it on social media. And then I started getting all these people asking me about it. So I started becoming an ADHD coach just because people were asking me about it. And what I really decided in the end, what I wanted to do was help workplaces make things better. And
So tell me, when you were there teaching, what were some of the symptoms that people had that you thought, oh, these people are ADHD and I have that, so I'm ADHD. Tell us about the symptoms.
so one of the first things that I realized was in schools and colleges in the UK now, students who've been diagnosed with ADHD or autism or various other things, they're allowed to just wear headphones. And it's to help tune out the thoughts that are just non-stop kind of chatting away. And that now when I was working in the labs, I listened to some audiobooks while I was doing the kind of tasks that are a bit more repetitive, shall we say. And I found it made my productivity increase massively. Other people started copying me doing that and then made mistakes because it didn't work for them like it worked for me. And then there was like this ban on like wearing headphones. And I can remember going to my boss and just saying to her, I don't know how to explain this, but I work better with the headphones on. And I can remember feeling like, oh, she's just going to think that I want to not do my work and that I'm lazy. And I was like, I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to understand. And so when I saw in the college these students being allowed to wear headphones, oh, because it's now a well-known thing in ADHD that helps tune out the thoughts, I was just a bit like, oh my God, validation. This is exactly what I was feeling. So, it's kind of a thing that was like, my body knew this helped, right? But I didn't have the vocabulary to describe why until I saw the students having this at the college. Sorry, I was going to say that's so. I just want to say that's so great what you said about your son. Like, oh, what do you know? Literally just like a week ago, you had this thing happen, and I'm here now telling you about it. Yeah, I like what I call it. Is using the headphones is like a thought vent. It's like we've got all these thoughts going on in our heads, and if there's no way to vent them somewhere, then they're going to distract us. So wearing headphones allows us to tune them out so we can actually choose where we're putting our focus.
Now, when you're wearing the headphones, uh, say for instance, you're a kid in school
Yeah.
and you're supposed to be listening to people talking or a certain video. For instance, in your classes, when you were teaching and the kids were wearing the headphones, are they listening to music? Are they listening to something completely unrelated and somehow able to absorb what you're saying? What's going on when they're wearing the headphones and they're in a class?
So usually, it depends on the student, right? There's a phrase that says if you've met someone with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. And
I've heard
I would
that.
just, yeah, same sort of thing with autism, it shows up in people in all these different ways, right? Now, for me personally, I put the headphones in when I'm putting my head down to like get on with stuff. So a lot of the students would do the same thing. They'd be told what to do. They'd then put the headphones on to get on with the task so that they can stay focused. Some students, though, did need to have them on when the teacher was talking. They'd usually have some kind of ambient track, like to do with, or something really quiet that's just some beat kind of going, dunce, 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 that kind of, sometimes a beat can sort of reset the thought process because the way the thoughts work, certainly with my ADHD, is the teacher will be talking and they'll say, oh, so in maths, it's good to use spider diagrams. And I'll go, spider? There was a spider in my room last night. I wonder where it's gone now. Bet it's gone behind the bookcase. Oh no, there's loads of things behind that bookcase. There you go. And there you can see where the trail goes. That's when you suddenly realize, oh crap, I've missed the past half hour of what they were saying because I've gone down a little side quest in my brain. If you've got these beats kind of playing, it's sort of, because you're distracted by the beats, it stops your brain going on this loop, going on its little adventure. Like it's kind of brings you back into the present, like because it's like
Interesting.
bam, bam, bam. So it works differently for different people. And if I had students who wanted to wear headphones, I'd usually have a conversation with them and just to kind of help them figure out, okay, in what ways does it help you? Because they usually wouldn't have the vocabulary to properly describe it. But just talking about it and being like, right, when does it help? And be honest, when is it distracting? Then you can kind of find out the right sort of rhythm for them.
Now, I heard you say that when you meet one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD because everybody's symptoms are different.
Yeah.
But in general, if you don't know anything about it, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a counselor, maybe you're a boss. What are three main indicators that perhaps this person is challenged with ADHD and it's been undiagnosed?
So the big ones are things like focus. So I mean, the condition's called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? And a lot of us in the community and on the medical side of it think that's an unfair name. We don't have a deficit of attention. We just we struggle with controlling where it goes. So being very easily distracted, the main thing is even if you're distracted from something you want to do. So if you hear the person saying something like, I want to focus, but I'm just struggling. And it's to do with the fact that when we're focusing, the brain is like firing the neurons off, right? Usually neurons are fired in a rhythmic way. So it kind of is like, so it's going boom, 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 and they're kind of like focusing. But an ADHD brain, it might be going boom, 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 boom,
Hmm,
boom, 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 boom. And so it can really kind of like turn you off to what's going on. And medication helps to regulate that way the neurons are firing.
hmm,
So yeah, so
fascinating.
focus, particularly when the person is struggling to focus on something they want to do, that's a kind of big indicator, certainly for children. For adults, it's obviously easier to talk about because they've spent a long time in themselves, so able to discuss it. The other one is things like, so cleaning up, right? That's a real struggle for a lot of people with ADHD because it generally takes a lot of effort. And I hate cleaning. I hate it. I hate it so much. one of the main reasons I kind of got put onto the idea of ADHD is because I couldn't bear the idea of doing my washing up to the point that I would sometimes curl into a ball and cry. Like, I live on my own. It's just me. It's the washing up is just my washing up. I have a dishwasher now. But before I had that dishwasher, sometimes I would not want to do the washing up so much to the point that, yeah, I would actually cry about the fact that I had to do it. And that kind of made me go, all right, there's something going on here, right? Nobody wants to do the washing up, but this is next level, not wanting to do
I
it.
wonder what the science is behind that.
So I've been learning a lot about the science lately, and I plan to learn a lot more. It's to do with that when you do it, so when you've got a brain that doesn't have like ADHD and all these kind of I think called neurotypical. So you can dopamine is the chemical that will allow you to see a boring task through. You build up some dopamine, and then you can see a boring task through, and it's not so bad. Now, if you've got a neurotypical brain, you can store this dopamine up to be able to do a crappy task. In ADHD, the brain doesn't hold on to that dopamine; it all falls back out. It's kind of like we've got holes in the net. So so that kind of dopamine is kind of like, and also the kind of idea of like, okay, well, if I get on with the washing up, I will be able to do my fun thing. So the dopamine coasts you through. The other thing, so struggling to do tasks that are boring to the point that it is that upsetting for you, that is my number 2 thing. Because a lot of it is like, there's a phrase in the ADHD community called dopamining, and it's when you're like doing fun tasks. So you're kind of like doing little fun tasks to build up that dopamine because like you need it to get through the day. So yeah, that's my number 2 one. If you have someone who is struggling to do tasks that to them is boring. My third one is something called time blindness. This is a really common thing in ADHD. And what that is that those of us with ADHD really struggle to notice the passage of time, and to also notice how long a task is going to take, right? So one of the reasons I used to get so upset about doing the washing up was because for some reason my brain was convinced that that pile of washing up was going to take my entire day up. That was it. The next 6 hours was going to be the washing up, and that was my whole day lost.
Those are going to be some clean dishes.
I know, right? For some reason, my brain was almost convinced that like, this is it. This is my life now. I have to do the washing up forever for the rest of my life. I can never do anything fun again, because we have this inability to understand time. Now, the reason for that is, I said about the neurons firing in a rhythmic fashion, but in ADHD they don't. It's part of the brain called the hippocampus, which fires these neurons regularly. Now that is our sense of time, because it goes rhythmically. It's almost like, I don't know how often it fires, probably milliseconds, but that rhythmic thing, it's like a metronome going tick, 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 tick. So for people who don't have ADHD, this is going off rhythmically. You can tell the time. But if that internal clock is going tick, 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 it completely throws off the balance of understanding the time passing. So that's another one. So that's my third main one. Yeah, if you've got someone like a child or a teenager who really struggles with that, like things like they'll be doing something and then you'll just be like, you've been gone for hours, what are you doing? And they'll be like, I thought it was what? I thought it had only been 20 minutes. And I had that in work before, where I started cutting these little labels out to put on the little our little test tubes, and we needed a bunch of them, so I just started cutting them out. I was cutting them out for 2 hours, and everyone was radioing around the lab to find out where I was. And then my boss eventually found me, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm cutting out the labels we needed." And he was like, "You've been like for 2 hours. What are you doing?" And I was a bit like, I didn't. I thought, what? And I looked at my watch and was like, "Oh my! I didn't realize time had passed." Now he didn't really believe me. He thought I was like, being lazy and trying not to work. And I just was like, there was nothing I could say to him that convinced him otherwise, because he was just convinced at this point that I was. And this is the problem a lot of ADHD people have at work, is the lack of knowledge about it makes people think, oh, they just don't want to work. They're just being lazy. when it's actually that my brain isn't firing in the same way as theirs, and I can't tell the passage of time. So those are my three big ones. Problems with focus, even on something you really want to do. Struggling to do boring tasks to the point that you're like crying about it. And the time blindness.
That's fascinating. And I've never heard it described like that. I mean, you're describing my son to a T.
Oh, well, good. That's good. Well, good. It's great when you can understand the relief you feel when you can understand. Like, I mean, I'm not a parent, but as a person with ADHD, the relief to find all this stuff out. And I imagine as a parent, when you feel like you understand, that must also be like, oh yes, because I imagine you're feeling like, yes, I think I can help him now.
Now, I know a lot of times it's great to get a diagnosis and you feel good when it's diagnosed, and providers feel good when they can give a diagnosis, but then the real key is the treatment. So say you've been diagnosed with ADHD, or you finally found out that you have it, even if other people aren't diagnosing you with it. But in order to live life, you've got to be able to focus. You've got to be able to do boring tasks. You've got to be able to have some time awareness. So what's the solution? I mean, you're quite successful. You grew into an adult. So
I did
you've
grow into an
definitely
adult. I did do that thing. That's a success, isn't it? I grew into an adult. There we go. Tick.
so you've definitely mastered this to some level. So tell us, how do you overcome these things?
Now, I'm not on medication yet. In the UK, there's a bit of a wait list there's a wait list for the diagnosis, and then there's a wait list for the medication, which I'm keen to try because why not? You know, if I don't like it, it doesn't work for me, I can always come off it. So I've got a lot of things that I now use myself, non-medical tasks, like just things around the house and processes that I use. So I've got something that I use for time blindness, which I think I have on my desk here. Yeah, it's right here. Not that you guys who are just listening will hear, but I've got this thing, which is my ADHD timer. Now, when I turn this timer on, everything goes red. So if I turn it up to 25, we've got red. It goes red up to 25, and then it will slowly get lesser. And I can visually see that. I can visually see exactly how much time I've got left on this timer. And that really helps because I can just glance over, see how much I've got left. So sometimes what I'll do is I will use this to say, right, you've got to focus on something now. Focus for 10 minutes, and then you can have 5 minutes scrolling on your phone. And that's called the Pomodoro technique. And it's the idea being that if you've got a task that you need to do, say you need to write out all your taxes. That is boring. It's boring for me anyway. Some people actually enjoy that, but it's boring for me. So the idea of doing that for me is completely overwhelming. I don't want to do it. Oh my God. So what I'll do is I'll engage this Pomodoro technique and be like, right, just 30 minutes where you do your work and then 15-minute break. Or like, if you desperately are struggling, you could do like 10 minutes of work, 20-minute break, 10 minutes of work, 20-minute break. That may sound like you might not get much done, but it's a hell of a lot more than the absolute zero amount of work you'd have done otherwise. So that's one of my methods. I also use this timer to help me track my time. If I'm doing something I find really fun and might get carried away with and forget the time, I'll set this at half-an-hour intervals so it beeps at me every half an hour. And I'm kind of like, oh, okay, half an hour's gone. And then that beep goes off. And I'm like, oh, okay, an hour's gone. It doesn't necessarily mean that I will stop doing the thing. It just kind of lets me know it's been half an hour, it's been half an hour, it's been half an hour. I let the timer do what my brain can't. Right. So I just find ways to kind of help me track when the time's going on. So like that. So those two ways I use that timer are really good for helping with focusing on a task that you find tough. So my other thing that I use now, if you're on the video, you'll see behind me, I've got this big colorful board. Now that is my board that helps me organize my business. A big thing with ADHD obviously, like I said, everyone's different, but generally speaking, a lot of people with ADHD are very visual. Out of sight, out of mind is a real problem if you've got ADHD. Now I have a big pin board where I have this is quite funny, right? I love this thing. So I have divided my business into lots of different tasks. So I have to do social media engagement. I have to do my finances. I have to keep my workspace clean and tidy. I have to make sure I engage with clients. I have products that I create. Each of those is assigned to an animal. One that you can see in the video here is the otter. So my otter is my social media engagement, right? When I've got to do something to do with social media engagement, I will pin a post-it note under that otter. So that means at a glance, I can see there is stuff to do involving my social media engagement. Now, when I have done that, I will pull the post-it note off the board and I will replace it with a little fish that shows that my otter has been fed. It's a big board. I can see it. It's in my house. As soon as I walk into my house, I can see it. So I can just literally visually see, can see all my animals, and I can see that there are post-it notes underneath each one. So I'm kind of like, okay, so I've got some work to do on this bit, and I've got some work to do on that bit, and I've got some work to do on that bit. When I've done those things, I pull them off and I feed the animal. Like I said, with otter, I replace it with a fish. So otter's been fed. That allows me to see that I have done some work in that area. Because the big problem with to-do lists is once you've taken it off, it looks like you haven't done anything, right? A lot of people love crossing that thing off their to-do list because they can visually see, they can draw the big line through and they can visually see, look at all these things I've crossed off. So I really wanted to incorporate that onto my pin board. And I do that by feeding my animals. So if like otter's got loads of fish underneath him, I can just go, brilliant, look how much social media engagement I've done. I don't need to worry about that one for a little bit. These sorts of things are really, these visual aids are really handy for ADHD. I have seen people use them with children to help with chores around the house. I've seen people kind of have these nicely designed board that has kind of like, so these are Amy's chores for the day, these are Dylan's chores for the day, and these are Mum's chores for the day. And everyone has their chores up on this board. And then so it means you can see what you need to do. Because if I didn't have this board on my wall, I would forget, and then people have them in the bedroom. Like you can have sometimes people have like tick lists for their kids going out the door. And it's like, have I got my coat? Have I got my keys? And like you can like literally slide the thing across to go yes, 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 yes. And that's kind of like, and you can, so like if you've got like say like a 10-year-old of ADHD who's struggling to remember stuff, you just have them look at that board in the morning and go, yeah, I've got my keys, yeah, I've got this, yeah, I've got that, oh, my phone, yeah, I'd have forgotten, go and get the phone. And then they look at the board and go, I've got that, I've got that, I've got that, brilliant, off to school, right?
Nice.
So that's like, those are, and they're really fun to make, and they can just solve everything. They can solve all these little problems.
So it sounds like both of those can help both. So the ADHD timer really helps all three. It helps your time. It helps your focus. It helps reduce boring tasks. It helps time blindness. The vision board definitely helps with focus. If you make it cute and fun, like you being I know in previous conversations, I've known that you're you used to be a zoologist, or you are a zoologist still. And so making a fun board can certainly make tasks less boring, more fun, and I guess in a way control time.
Yeah.
By getting you more focused. Any other cool tools?
I do have another one I use, and it's something I like to call clutter buckets. Here's my clutter bucket that's on my table. Anyone who can see the video will see that in my clutter bucket I have a cloth. I have a pair of headphones. Oh, I have a pencil that fell on the floor. I have a speaker. What this clutter bucket is for is that is my bucket of stuff that I don't know where to put. Because you just end up with piles of stuff when you've got ADHD. I imagine you end up with piles of stuff in any situation, but like I find I just end up with piles of stuff and it will just be strewn across the desk really haphazardly. So I've now got these little buckets in places where that is the clutter bucket. And that is, if I don't know where it goes in the bucket. So at least it is contained.
Now, I know you mentioned that you personally haven't been on medication, but being that you've studied ADHD quite a bit, can you talk about medication a bit? Is it helpful? If it's helpful, is it helpful for most people, a few people? Besides making your house more ADHD friendly, should people consider going on medication?
It's definitely something you should consider, because it is a path. There's a lot of mixed opinions on medication. There's some quite extreme opinions of people kind of saying, oh, like the the government just want to medicate you so you're like everyone else, but you're not, you're special and you should embrace that and all that thing. There's merit to that. However, you know, if you're really struggling, then the medication can be quite helpful. From what I've got a few friends on medication for their ADHD. It has not changed their personality and who they are at all. Like,
Has it
and I
helped
think
them focus or,
yes, it has.
you know,
So, I think the idea with and there are some medications that will do it. And the thing is, once again, the medication is going to be different for everyone, right? Like, it can, one of the people I know, actually my own personal coach, who's an ADHD coach, I know that she kind of has tried a few of the medications and she said they didn't work for me. I didn't like how they made me feel. But then my branding photographer who has ADHD, she said she loves her medication, like, and she wouldn't be without it. So it can be completely different, right? And it's different for different people. So a blanket statement of no, it doesn't work, or yes, it's great, is no good. If you want, it's worth trying because you can always come off it if you want to. And it's got to really be up to the person. Even if it's a child, it's really got to, if they don't like who they've become on medication, then it's probably best to stop that child's medication and find alternative methods. So the good things that I've heard about the medication is that it can, what I said about the neurons firing, it can regulate those neurons, which can help with things like time blindness. People then sometimes get a little bit like, oh, but wait, who am I with or without the ADHD? What of my personality is the ADHD and what isn't? And I kind of like to say with that, the way I've come to terms with it is kind of like, you get to choose who you want to be. A lot of your identity is the choices that you've made, not what you've been determined as. I kind of say, like, when you were in school, every student you were with was given the same subjects to study, right? But you still chose which ones you liked, and someone else chose which ones they liked. There are aspects of, if you've got ADHD, there are aspects of it that you will enjoy and aspects that you won't enjoy. Now, there are some people who love the thoughts going off in their mind all the time, right? And there are some people who hate it. Now, if you hate it and feel it really holds you back, then, having medication could really help, right? But if you really enjoy that, like, because I get a little bit like the idea of the thoughts all stopping, I get a little bit like, what? And what's in my brain? Nothing. What? That sounds boring. I'm really keen to try it to see what it's like, because maybe I'll try and go, oh, actually, this is really helpful. But yeah, it's once again really a personal choice. But my ADHD is such that I have found ways I can control it. There are some people's ADHD where they just cannot stop themselves from just interrupting all the time because the thought comes into their head and they can't stop themselves from blurting it out. So they're interrupting, and everyone in their life is getting sick of it. And they might be like, oh my God, I just want to stop. I don't want to alienate people. I don't want people to think I'm being rude, but I can't stop. And it's ruining my relationships. That person, I'd probably say, right, well, maybe you might want to go and try out the medication, because that might, because there's different dosages of it, right? Like, you might only do small dosage to help you just control those impulses. So, it's a mixed bag of medication. I'm keen to try it, see what it's like. I actually went to a talk the other day where there was a scientist and he was talking. I wish I could remember his name. I don't remember his name. I'll tell you who he is later, Carla, and you can put it in like links. But he was talking about the medication, and he said how the thing is, there's not enough studies done yet. We are getting there. But in order to study ADHD, we need to do a lot of fMRI, functional MRI scans, and those are really expensive. So at the moment, a lot of the studies are on like 15 people with ADHD versus 15 people without. And that is not enough. We need to have like 5,000 people with ADHD versus 5,000 people without. We need to have that, makes it statistically significant. But there's just not a lot of funding yet to have that. We are going to get there. And I think he said that we're about maybe 5, I think he said 5 years away from having a legitimate test where it can just be like, boop, boop, yep, you've got it. Kind of like a diabetes test.
Have you ever heard of Daniel Amen? and the Amen clinics.
Oh no, I don't think I have.
I would definitely check him out. He's over here in the US. I don't know if the FM, would you call them the fMRI scans?
Yeah, functional MRI, fMRI. Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's the same thing as his spec scans, but he started off as a psychiatrist, but he had done a lot of imaging when he was in the service, and he kind of married both of those. And he created this SPECT scanning, SPECT, and it is expensive. I actually had it done a few years back. It was about $1,500 for 2 scans and some workup. But he does a lot on ADHD, and with his spec scans, he's trying to train many, many people, many, many providers. Because one of his points was, in most other areas of medicine, doctors, providers, they have external tools like X-ray, MRI, CT scan, and they use those to confirm or back up their diagnoses or to get further information.
Hmm.
In psychiatry, there was nothing like that. So he's trying to bring this in because he has literally studied thousands and tens of thousands of people and had their brain scans. And he works with the NFL, the National Football League, because a lot
Yeah.
of the people that have the brain damage are the football players, American football, I'm talking about, since you're in London.
Yeah. Yes, American football, where
Because you
they
can
just
only
like
get your
to
head
careen
slammed.
into each other. Yeah.
You can only get your head slammed into other people so many times before you have brain
Yeah.
damage,
Yep.
you know? So he's done a lot of, I haven't read extensively about the ADHD through him. Um, but that might be another thing to look at. And if you are in the States, consider going to the Amen clinics and working with them. They have a lot of supplements. That was another question I was going to ask you about is I don't know a lot about supplements, but I'm a big believer in them. Have you heard of or tried different supplements for ADHD?
Yes, I've not tried supplements. I do know that whenever I make a post about ADHD, about 8 bots will post on my thing saying, "Oh my God, have you tried the supplement?" And I'm just like, "No, go away." I'm
He
not.
has a
Yeah,
Daniel
I
A.
don't have any. I don't have any experience with the supplements. I don't know anyone who's. I also don't know anyone else who's tried the supplements. I get all the adverts for it. I'm a bit. I'm a bit hesitant with the supplements because of the way they're advertised to me. There
Mhm.
was one I was going to try, but then it was like, oh, you have to sign up for a monthly subscription to it, and I was like, no, just send me a just let me pay you a tenner and you can send me like a few doses for me to try it. Don't make me sign up for something monthly. So therefore I didn't do it because I was like, well,
Right.
I want to try it first, I need to see if it works for me before I sign up. It was something like, oh, either sign up or you have to pay 60 quid to get like the whole bag. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't know if this will work or not.
Mhm.
Um, so like, and it also makes me feel a bit like, well, if you're so sure of your product, surely you'd be happy to send me like a couple of samples for like, just like a tenner or something.
Mhm.
Like, but that was not an option. So it just made me feel a bit suspicious about it. I'm sure there are people who've had really good, because it's like these mushroom blends or something. Now, right. Now, one of the things that is going on a lot in the ADHD research side of things is the use of certain drugs. So particularly the hallucinogenic type drugs that actually, when used in a controlled environment, have shown evidence that the brain can start to sort itself out and sort these neurons out that are firing. Now, there's a lot of really sound theory behind it, but obviously it's quite controversial. So
Mhm.
that's something that this doctor who I listened to the other day, that's something that they're working on to try and see like what's the benefits of this. It's like how a lot of the marijuana stuff is being studied more now to kind of aid in like medical recovery. And so there's kind of being a lot more looking at, okay, well, what about other drugs that are and have been considered illegal in the past? Because they've been so illegal for so long, it means a lot of the experimentation hasn't been able to be done with them. But the kind of like in a lot of countries, not in England, marijuana is still illegal over here. But the kind of lifting of the um, illegality of marijuana in some places has kind of enabled places to actually do a lot of research on them and actually find, oh, okay, so actually maybe in some controlled cases there are actually some good medical benefits, so there's a lot of there's a lot of research that's in its infancy that
Mm-hmm.
is showing really good results. He also said that ADHD is one of the few kind of medical conditions where when you medicate people, they are often sorted. Their problems are sorted. Like, the people who stay on the medication often are just like, brilliant, I'm good. This is great. They also found that most people come off the drugs after 5 years. And he said, now there's not a huge amount of research as to why. He said he's got his own personal opinions. Could be that people are just forgetting to take them 5 years later, or there's sound evidence that actually taking the drugs for that long has encouraged the brain to sort of rewire itself
Mm-hmm.
into a way that's easier. And of course, he was saying, like, now some people find that really uncomfortable, the idea of rewiring their brain. But then for some people who are like struggling, just like when I was crying on the floor, unable to do the dishes, right? There's no benefit to that, right? Now I've found ways around that now, but if if I can take a drug that means that I will maintain my personality and who I am, but helps me do the stuff that's hard, great, I'm there. And if that can make it so that my brain can cope with those things better rather than just getting overwhelmed and going, I don't know where to start, and it's building up and up and up to the point that I have to throw my dishes away because now they're too moldy to eat, to ever be clean again, like which has happened before and is not an
Well, like you
uncommon
said,
thing.
when you meet one person with ADHD, you've only met one person with ADHD because everybody is so different.
Yeah.
And therefore, though, the treatment will be different for each person, and everything is on a spectrum. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there with ADHD that have either a mild case versus a serious case. A mild case, you're not going to need medication. A serious case, it could be the difference between living a life or being homeless or needy. Um, if you want to get married, have a family, and have it be a relatively normal existence, then you might want to consider going on medication if that's your case, because there are so many
Yeah.
different careers, and you may have found a career where it just works around your ADHD, even if it is severe. As you know, with every podcast, I love to give people a call to action at the end, something that they can do today, whether they have money or not, that they can improve their lives. So I'm wondering if you have something like that for us today.
So yeah, I've got a couple of options. So my website, which is just www.samanthadematos.com. It's great having an uncommon name. It means that you can get all of your name on every. It means you can get your name on every domain and things like that. Um, so I've got a. So I've got what do I call it? Like an ADHD specific one-on-one session, which is a one-off session, and I do it for quite a low price because I'm actually kind of using it to kind of gather kind of my own data really about what people's struggles of ADHD are. So I've got that on at the moment, and it's less than 100. It's less than in fact it's less than 50 quid, less than $50. So I've got that at the moment. I've got my own little course that is free and it gets sent to your email address, and that is, I call it my instincts course. But what that does, that helps you to get kind of back in touch with who you really are. And I find that's really useful for anyone who's got ADHD, because a lot of it is the whole, oh my God, well, what's the ADHD and what's me? I don't know anymore, but really, who you are is, well, it's a combination of all these things that have happened to you throughout your life, right? And so I do work with a lot of people to kind of like help with their kind of identities and use that as kind of like a way to really get them through their lives, because I hate mornings, for example. I'm never going to be a morning person. When someone says to me, "Wow, if you want to be productive, 5 a.m. starts," and I'm like, no. The reason why I'm starting, like, oh, let's start your own business by getting you to get up at 5 a.m. I'm like, hell no. The reason why I have my own business is so I don't have to get up until like 10 o'clock. And I work all the way through till like midnight, So I just have a different set. Now I've been found out that ADHD, the circadian rhythm, is often behind by like about 3 hours or so. So that kind of is like, oh, well, that makes sense. Also, my mother worked in theatre, still works in theatre. Actually, she's had her 50-year anniversary at her theatre. So when we were growing up, we were late risers, late going to bed, because she wouldn't be going off to work until like 1 p.m. and then she'd work all the way through to like midnight. So that's kind of what I grew up with. But the point of that course is kind of figuring out, right, what is your things? What are your things? Let's kind of figure out what is holding us back from you really getting in touch with your personal instincts, so you know what's right for you. And then we can start to build up these systems, right? Then you can go and talk to your boss and say, right, how this works for me is X. I am not actually that good in the mornings. Could I maybe start at 11 and finish work at 8 rather than like 9 till 6, right? I had situations where that was fine in work and some situations where it wasn't. Sort of depends where you are. I'm just using the morning thing as an example. But that's a free option, which is on my website under Instinct course. I'll obviously give you the link for that.
So the free option is to go over to her website, see the link below in the description, and sign up for her Instinct. Is it a course?
Yeah, so it's a course that comes to you via email. So it's like 7 emails that comes to you every other day.
Yeah. So sign up for her course. It's free, and it just might help you out.
Yeah. And then if you want some more tailored one-to-one advice, I do have my one session, which is my session on your brand of ADHD. Let's figure out what your brand of ADHD is, and then think about what life we can build. And that's on for like a really low price because I use it. I'm using it to kind of like gather a lot of information.
I love it. All right. Well, it was great having you on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's so good to be able to talk about it.